Okay, now.
Are we starting?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. We're just getting ourselves set up with all the techie stuff. I still have yet to learn how to do all that. I'd like to welcome all of you to another incredible session of Spark Let's Get Real. So these sessions were actually, we intended to create them so that we can have amazing people on, we can interview them, and they can share a little bit of hope and wisdom and share their experience with all of our amazing Orlando audience to sort of give us a sense of community, that we're not alone, we're not going through these struggles on our own, and to help us get through them in some way. And tonight, I'm very excited for tonight's session. Firstly, we have a lot of visitors, so it's not just our Orlando community. We have people from all over America on tonight, so that's super exciting. And the topic this evening and the person that we are going to be hearing wisdom from tonight is Ruchi Koval. And Ruchi, she is an incredible person, a very accomplished individual. I can't even list all the things that she's accomplished, but I'm not going to embarrass her right here. But she's an author and a lecturer and, of course, a mom, and her husband and she together founded a congregation called JFX in Cleveland. And her whole being, her whole world is to basically help people, reach out to her Jewish brothers and sisters and share with them wisdom and the light of Torah and Judaism. So I'm so thrilled to have Ruchi on tonight. Welcome, Ruchi.
Thank you, Shifra. I'm so excited to be here. I do have a special place in my heart for Orlando. I've been a couple times. I was at one of your amazing Shabbatones back when we were able to do Shabbatones, and it was just what you guys have in Orlando is so special. So it's an honor to be part of your virtual community for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I also feel that our community is super special. I'm very honored to be a part of it. And so this topic, parenting our children, but specifically we're going to focus on our teens tonight.
Yeah.
So parenting with radical acceptance. So this particular topic for me is something that's very dear to my heart because I'm a brand new parent, so to speak, of teens.
Ooh,
I have, thank you. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. So I have not been in this parenting teen business for very long. And
well, kids become teens now when they're like 10. So you got a running start.
This is true. Absolutely. Yeah, my 10-year-old already is starting with all the drama. I'm like, oh, no, give me, please hold out just a little longer. So yes, so basically, as parents, we want to do right by our children. And there's so many factors involved that get in the way sometimes of us giving them what they truly need. Mm-hmm. Especially at this age when they are asserting their independence and they want to have their own say, and all that is going on, and it brings out stuff in us that sometimes is not the prettiest, and it's a struggle.
Yeah.
So tonight, Ruchi, we're here to talk about your experience. I just want to hear a little bit about your particular journey, your parenting journey. Mm-hmm. And how this whole, this parenting with radical acceptance evolved for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really started a very long time before I had teenagers. Our second child was extremely colicky, and he basically screamed for 5 months. Now, for anybody who has had that experience, it is very destabilizing because it was our second child, our daughter, who is older than him. They're 19 months apart. So I was just like so tired. My body was like, what the heck is going on right now? All I wanted to do was to comfort my baby and be a good mother, but nothing would comfort him. He wouldn't stop screaming. And it was the first inkling I got that like parenting is so out of your control and that there is a serious limit to what you can do. And I am the kind of person who likes to control. I'm pretty good at it. I like to be in leadership roles. I like to be in charge. I like to fix things. I have really good ideas of how to fix things. If only everybody would just listen to me, everything would be fixed. So when it came to my kids, that was like the first inkling I got pretty early on in my parenting journey that some things cannot be fixed. And that you could have all the education and all the will and the desire and the resources and the commitment, and it still might not be enough. Um, but I would say the second major parenting moment that I had was when our fourth child, who is now 20, was maybe 3 years old, four, I don't remember, going to a cousin's birthday party. We went to Target. This was a Sunday. We went to Target on Sunday morning to buy a birthday present for his cousin. And I thought that something would be a great birthday present, and he didn't. He thought something else would be a good birthday present. I didn't like that birthday present. That was going to be a bad birthday present. It was embarrassing to me. So I said, no, we're not buying that birthday present. We're going to buy this one instead. He had such an embarrassing full-on meltdown at Target. Now, remember I said he was my fourth child, so he wasn't the only kid with me at Target at that moment. Um, and I just remember having an internal meltdown myself. I was sitting there at Target, birthday present in one hand, watching this child completely melt down. Thank God it was a Sunday morning and it was pretty quiet at Target, but anybody who was there was staring at us because it was so out of control. And I remember getting this panicky feeling inside of me, like, I can't do this. This is not normal. I can't do this. This is not normal. I'm not cut out for this. I quit. Somehow or another, I managed to pay for this stupid birthday present, shove the kid in the car, the other kid in the car seat click, car seat click. I get in the driver's seat and I start shaking. And I call my husband on the phone and I said, something is wrong with our child. He ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD several years later, and he really had a very difficult childhood. So that was like the second major moment where I was like, I can't do this. I'm not cut out for this. I'm in over my head. Um, and then years later, when my kids did start becoming teenagers and they started like really making some decisions that were really uncomfortable, really unpleasant, really embarrassing, behavior issues, addiction issues, um, truancy, just totally blowing off school, um, just really acting out in many ways. And that was when we sought help, and that's when we discovered this sort of method of parenting with radical acceptance. So that's the background to you know basically me going from a point of I can control this, I can fix this, I can make this better, to a mindset of there are some things that I can't fix, and the sooner I can get to a place of acceptance with those things, the better, even though they seem impossible to accept, especially for someone like me.
I relate to what you're saying so much. Like I might not have had that exact example in Target with the birthday present, but I can think of at least 10 right now where right here where it was like I was not going to accept the decision that my child was making in that moment. And when I realized that I had no control over what they were doing right now, that feeling of, I think it was like a feeling of terror.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do I do? What do I do? They are acting completely, in my opinion, crazy. And
Yeah.
I have nothing I can do to really control them in any way. They are their own beings. That feeling is so terrifying for me. So I really relate to what you're saying, and I'm so looking forward to hearing what this parenting with radical acceptance is all about, because I think that's one of the things I struggle with is really accepting. I can talk about acceptance from today to tomorrow. I love talking about acceptance, how we need to talk about accepting our spouse for who they are, right? And accepting our situation. But when it comes to the real work, like
Yeah.
really having to accept it, that's where it gets really hard for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so what is it? That's the question.
Yes.
So I think that parenting divides out into two categories: things that are working and things that are not working. When it comes to things that are not working, I think that the instinct as a parent, and particularly as a good parent, because good parents try to be proactive and to do things, not to sit back and just let stuff happen. The instinct with the things that are not working is to try harder with the method that's not working, right?
Mhm.
So, for
Okay.
instance, let's say my kid is not doing his homework, right? And I'll start off like super nice. Sweetie, did you do your homework? No, mom, it's stupid. I don't have to do it. Whatever. It's not really due. Yeah, I'll do it later, or I did it already, or whatever 100 things they say, right?
Yep.
So talking to the kid is not working. Okay, I have empirical evidence that talking to the kid is not working. So what do I do?
Any talk at all.
Let's just say that I'm in that situation, right? I talk nicely, I nudge, I nag, I threaten, I bribe. None of it is working.
Yeah,
So
okay.
what do I do? What is my instinct as a parent now? To ratchet up, talk more, talk louder, talk more desperately, talk more often, nag higher, raise the bar.
Raise the
Um,
decibel.
what's that?
Raise the decibel.
Raise the decibel, right? So we wouldn't really do that. If it were like a business decision, right? We wouldn't say, well, let's see, this isn't working, so let's do it more.
Right.
But very often we do that with parenting. Why? Because we feel like that mom at Target where we feel like we don't have any choices. I'm trapped. What am I supposed to do? Just let him not do his homework? Well, here's what's going to happen. And then we start to catastrophize. Here's what's going to happen if he's not doing his homework. He's going to drop out of school. He's going to become a juvenile delinquent. He's going to end up in jail and I'm never going to see him. We go there. We go there fast.
We do.
So our parenting decisions are fueled by fear and desperation, not from a place of calm, not from a place of rationality, not from a place of, curiosity. Why isn't this working? What else could I try? What if I tried something else? What if I accepted the fact that this child isn't doing homework? What if I tried something completely different? Because we're like a cat stuck in a tree and our claws are so in that we just don't know how to let go.
Wow.
So parenting with radical acceptance and by the way, if things are working, right, that's the other category, right? Let's say I give my kids allowance. I don't happen to believe in allowance, but let's just say that I give my kids allowance, right? And then I say, okay, you know what? You'll get your allowance after you do your chores, homework, fill up the car with gas, blah, blah, blah. And let's say that works. My kid doesn't love it, but they comply most of the time. Our
Mhm.
relationship is generally pretty good. Amazing. Keep doing what's working. I'm a fan. Sometimes people say, should I just stop parenting my child? No, of course not. Continue to do whatever's working. And for different parents and different kids and different households, what those things look like are all going to be totally different. What we say in radical acceptance is the things that are not working, stop digging in deeper. And every parent in their relationship with any child is going to have a list of things that are not working. That's your Achilles heel in your relationship with your kid. It could be chores, it could be homework, it could be how they talk, the friends that they make, how they choose to spend their free time, how much time they waste on, during their free time. But I'm sure that every parent listening to this can think of at least three things, three issues that are constantly coming up and that we keep falling back to our go-to methods that are not working. That's where parenting with radical acceptance comes in. Okay, I'm going to give you an example.
Yes.
One of my children is chronically late. Okay, now I've tried many things over the years. We've got the watch, we've got the clock in the shower that suctions to the wall, we've got the reminders, we've got the timers, we've got the nudges, right? None of those things have really helped over the long term. So I have two choices. I can accept the child who is in front of me right now. The child who is in front of me right now is chronically late. And guess what? Some of them turn into adults who are chronically late. You may be married to one of them. You may be one of them, right? That happens. So I am going to have to accept the fact that this child is chronically late. So I can either tell the child that we're leaving 15 minutes earlier than we really are and just have 15 minutes to sit on the couch and read a book. Or I can just build in wiggle room in whatever we do, right? So that I'm accommodating what's not changing. Meaning, it's not so much what I do because I may be anyway sitting around and waiting for 15 minutes, right? But what I am changing is how I feel about it on the inside. Instead of feeling trapped and bullied and victimized by my child, instead of feeling disempowered as a parent, I'm the one in control. I am recognizing, it's like a, what do they call it? A load bearing wall. Certain things cannot be moved and you have to work around them, right? Nobody says, well, you're going to teach that wall. You're going to teach that wall to move. You know what? That line, you got to teach them. That's for things that are working. Certain kids are not teachable about certain things. And it's important, I want to interject, to use the concept of growth mindset. Growth mindset is a book written by Carol Dweck about the fact that we are plastic, we can change, and that we should not talk about ourselves and others as though their qualities are finite. So you might say to yourself, instead of saying, this kid will always be late, this kid will always be truant, this kid will never do his homework, he'll always go, she'll end up in juvenile delinquency, blah, 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 right? Instead of doing that, I can say, wow, this child does not have time management skills yet. And that little word changes everything, because I'm telling you, our older kids are 26, 24, 23, 20. Things do change and some things do not change. But it is not helpful to project that things won't change, because that's what fills you with that terror that you described earlier and that panic. And nobody parents wisely out of terror and panic. Nobody is going to make a good choice from that place.
Okay, so hearing what you're saying, Ruchi, this is my question for you. The example that you gave with being chronically late. So a parent listening to this might say, okay, I mean, this is something that may cause us a little bit of embarrassment, discomfort, but the repercussions of a child who's chronically late may not be the end of the world. But what about a child who, like you said, refuses to do their work, refuses to do their schoolwork? And as a parent, you so badly want them to go to secondary education, to get into college, that they're not, there's consequences to things that they may not be doing presently. And for a parent to watch that and not provide, so obviously they have to do things that are effective, but to just sit and allow, so to speak, without teaching the proper skills to their child, that may seem a little bit challenging. Like, how do we teach this?
It's extremely challenging. It's brutal.
It's what?
It's brutal.
It's brutal. Yes. Yeah. And the consequences are a big deal. Like, they may fail and then they may not be accepted into a college or a high school that they want. And now what? Like that, do we try and teach our child how to, have managed doing their work? Or so how do we navigate things like that actually have very big ramifications if they just don't do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to challenge some of the language that you used in your question, because I think that's the mindset that gets us in trouble sometimes. You said, like, I want my child to go to secondary, to go to college. Right. You have a lot of wants for your child, but that might not be relevant to the child in front of you. How can I just sit back and allow my child? You actually don't have control. You feel like you have the power to allow or disallow your child to do their homework, but by the time your child is a teen, you actually don't have that power. It's not a matter of you allowing or disallowing. A teen is going to do whatever the heck they want. I'm sorry for the bad news.
Right. What are you doing to me?
I'm sorry, don't shoot the messenger. But you're going to either learn that the hard way or the easy way, right? Should you be teaching your child about responsibility and real life consequences? Yes. Guess what? Your child who is a teenager who is not doing their homework already knows exactly how you feel about doing homework, responsibility, real life consequences, and getting into college. In fact, if you were interviewing that child right now and say, hey, how does your mom feel about not doing homework? They could quote you verbatim. They know exactly how you feel. It's not about giving them more information. It's about giving them motivation. Now, I'm going to talk about motivation in a minute.
Please.
But before that, I just want to back up and answer your question. Some kids are not going to go to college. Some kids are going to torpedo their academic experience. They really will. I'm a mother to some of those kids. Some kids are going to have to repeat 12th grade. Some kids are going to get low-wage jobs because they never got that higher education. That really might happen. The sooner you accept that that's a possibility, the better. Instead of that being the boogeyman in the closet, that can't happen, it might. So start working on acceptance now, just in case. Number two, nothing is going to teach your child about life more than real life consequences. So maybe that's not such a bad thing. There is nothing like working a low wage job to get you motivated to go to college. Because you
Wow.
work at that low wage job and then you say to yourself, do I really want to do this for the next 50 years? Right? And then again, some kids might have that motivation, some won't, but that's going to speak far louder than any lecture from their parent that they have already heard 100 times and could quote verbatim. So this fright of letting our kids face these high stakes real life consequences is perhaps misplaced. Perhaps that fright is misplaced. Life will teach them what they cannot learn from you. Because you may have noticed that kids will tune out, teens particularly, will tune out their parents more than they will tune out any other voice in their world. If a boss tells them something, if a friend tells them something, if they read something on social media, they will believe it faster than if you tell it to them. And that leads me to what I was saying before about motivation. Parenting with radical acceptance is not just about refraining from telling your kids things, right? Just like sitting on your hands, so to speak, like you were saying, am I really going to allow them to flunk out of high school? Parenting with radical acceptance is mostly about acceptance. What acceptance means is that instead of focusing on all the aspects of my child that drive me crazy, could I possibly, aside from accepting them, right? This is not a child who does homework. This is not a child who comes on time. Aside from that, because, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the negative traits get so much negative attention. What if I could reclaim my relationship with my child, truly accept the child in front of me, and make this child feel so loved and so accepted by focusing on all the things they're amazing at and all the things they're good at? There was a book I read that affected me profoundly. If you read it, please get a box of tissues because you'll need it. It's called Spark by Christine Barnett. It's a memoir by a mom who's raising a child with autism, but it has such global applications. And the basic message of this book is that in education and in parenting, we generally tend to focus on areas of weakness. Let's say your child is not very strong in math. So what do? You do extra math after school. You get a tutor, right? Let's say they're really good at math, but not very good at language arts, right? So you're like, oh, math, they're fine. They don't have to do more math. I'll get them a tutor for English and language arts. What she argues in this book through her experiences with severely autistic children is that what if we just sort of let those things hover in the background and spent all that extra time, money, energy, resources, enrichment on their areas of strength? So she was dealing with this an autistic young woman, a young girl, not her daughter, and the girl was not very high functioning. So normally we do the speech therapy and occupational therapy and the physical therapy and all the areas of weakness. But she was like, you know what this kid loves to do? This kid loves to bake. So she decided, what if we dropped all this therapy that the kid hated and baked? This kid ended up becoming a professional baker that earned her a living.
Wow.
Now, how that looks educationally for each individual child is obviously totally out of my, above my pay grade. My point is that I think this principle can be applied. We look at our kids and what do we say? This kid is always late. This kid speaks disrespectfully. This kid never goes to bed on time. This kid spends way too much time on Minecraft. But what do we lose in that process? This kid is sweet. This kid is kind. This kid is adorable. This kid is a whiz at math. This kid is amazing at basketball. In fact, some of the things that drive us crazy are the things that they're so good at. When my kid was addicted to Minecraft, you know what I used to do? I used to sit next to my kid and watch the game with him and say, oh my gosh, this is so cool. How does it work? I mean, you have to try not to be annoying when you do that. But to really accept the fact that this is an area of strength for your child. And what if I got to know the child in front of me instead of criticizing the game all the time? Get into the game with him. Instead of saying, why do you spend so much time outside playing basketball? There's math homework here. What if you sat outside and watched him play basketball and clapped every time he got a basket? That's what radical acceptance looks like. Actually accepting the child that God gave you instead of fighting that child every step of the way.
And
When you
trying
do
to make
that,
them into something that they're not. That's
right?
really what we're trying to do.
Well, what we're trying to do is to
Right?
create them in our image.
In our, or in the image that we wished we would have become, or whatever that is, but
Well,
not who they are.
sometimes it's what we did and we want our kids to do it too. Sometimes it's what we didn't get to do. And so we're trying to do it vicariously through our kid.
Right, right. Wow.
But the point of this is that you build a trust with your child, right? Because nothing can replace trust in a relationship. You know, some people have all these contracts with their kids and they check their phones all the time. I think contracts are totally a waste of time. I think snooping on your kid's phone is a waste of time. I think if you have, because we all know that our kids are way smarter than us technologically, and trust me, they can delete everything before we see their phone. They're much smarter than us. Or they have some other device hiding under their covers that you don't know about. The point is that if you truly cultivate trust, which comes from acceptance, you're not going to have to snoop on your kid. It is much more likely that your kid will feel that you are a safe person to bring into their world. If you don't freak out every time they tell you something, you just accept and you listen and you deal from a place of calm.
Okay, Ruchi, I love what you're saying. I need you to get a little bit more practical for me. What does that look like? Because I'm sitting here like, whoa, this is big stuff. This is a complete paradigm shift, and it all makes so much sense. It's just really clicking. But I'm like, how on earth does this look in a practical day-to-day life? Can you give me some example? Because
Sure.
yeah,
Okay.
let's hear.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna actually use an example of a younger child for this. So my 10-year-old daughter, she has my old iPhone, which we gave her when school shut down last year, which is really a lot younger than I would want to give a child a device. But it
Sure.
was sort of desperate times, desperate measures. Don't judge. Anyways, she, I have my like filters on it, and it has like the app restrictions and blah blah blah. And she gives it to me every night. And occasionally I look through her phone, and she knows I do. And I say, no, every now and then I'm going to look through your phone. Fine. I don't like the idea of group chats for fifth graders. I think it's just drama, drama, drama. And like, I just don't think it's smart. So she tells me that she got added to a group chat. So instead of, freaking out or giving her like a lecture, I said, oh, that's so interesting. I find that sometimes people's feelings get hurt in group chats much more than texting with a friend one on one. Have you found that? And she's like, no, 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 it's a very nice group of girls. I said, okay, well, if you ever feel like your feelings get hurt, will you come talk to me about it? And she's like, sure. So last night when she gave me her phone, I started scrolling through the group chat, which she didn't delete anything because she didn't feel threatened by me. She didn't
Right.
feel like, oh, my mom's gonna snatch away my phone or delete my group chats or deactivate my texting or whatever. It was more of like a conversation. I trust you, and some people say, why should I extend trust to the kid who hasn't earned that trust or who doesn't deserve that trust? And it's true. Sometimes a kid is in danger, and if a kid is in danger, all bets are off. Forget the rules. You save your kid, right?
Like
But
substance abuse or things like that.
yes, yes, substance abuse, or if strangers are contacting them via strange messaging apps, that's totally different. The point is that if you have trust with your child, if you're calm and you're not inflammatory and you're not reactionary, it is so much more likely that they will come to you with those things and tell you, right? So at this point, I think that the chances are really, really high that if something upsetting or some mean girl stuff happens on the group chat, I think the chances are really, really high that my daughter will come to me. And if she does, I'll tell you what I'm going to say. I'm gonna say, wow, that sounds really hard. That's kind of why I feel like sometimes when it comes to girls, group chats can turn mean. Do you feel like you still want to stay on this chat, or do you feel like you might want to leave? And I think I'm gonna get a really honest answer out of her, as opposed to this very top-down, unilateral kind of rulemaking, which often comes from fear.
Yeah.
And she might get her feelings hurt, and she might see things I don't want her to see. That might happen. That's real life. And some people say, well, 10 is too young for that. Look, every family is different. She's the youngest of 7 kids. Everyone has a device, except for her. So in our situation, and also COVID, and there was no school for months, and it was like just a really tough situation. So every
Survival.
parent, what?
We're in survival in this past year. So
Yeah, and so every parent has to know where they draw the line. But I'm just saying that, style wise, right? I think that this hardline parenting, which some people call good parenting, hardline parenting in a way that leaves your kid feeling trapped usually backfires. They will usually make it their business to prove to you that you can't control them. And they will start to hide things from you.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's not good.
Yeah.
Way better to know what's going on with your kid than to not know.
And it's a vicious cycle because the trust gets broken. So you don't trust them, but they don't trust you. And it's you putting more rules on them and them sort of
Right.
trying to assert their independence and
Right.
letting
And
you
that's
know that, yeah.
right. And that's what I started out saying, that like, oh, I'll make a rule. The rule didn't work. Okay, I'll make a new rule. But like, right, we're barking up the same tree.
Yeah. So my question to you about this approach, and I'm sure I could be parents are sharing this similar question. There certain things that we just don't want our children exposed to, right? Like there's certain apps that I don't want my 14-year-old daughter downloading or being busy on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is your approach to say, if she asks me, Mom, I want to download this particular app, and I've heard a lot of things about it, I don't think it's the best thing for her in this moment, would you say I give her that choice to, if I know she's going to listen to me, she may not be happy with me, but at this point, our relationship is that she will follow, I hope, the guidelines of what we set forth for her. So you're saying have no guidelines or
No, 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 no,
implement
no,
them?
no.
How do we balance the two in
Yeah.
terms of that?
So again, if something's working, keep doing it. If you have a good relationship with her, and if you set that boundary and she'll follow, she may not be happy with it, but she'll come around, by all means. That is what parenting looks like, right? The question is, and this is how you really have to know your child. There are some kids who, if they get a no from their parent, will secretly go behind their parents' back and do it anyways, right?
Right.
So that's what you have to know. Who is the child in front of me? There's like a parenting with radical acceptance as like a global approach, like what I said before, like really accepting the child in front of me. This child is not going to go to college. This child is not going to ever be good at math. This child, or I shouldn't say not going to be ever good at math, doesn't like math yet. um, or let's say I really love running and I want my kid to really love running, and this is not a kid who loves running, right? So that's more of like the macro, like accepting the child who's in front of you. Then there's the micro, like the mini decisions. I mean, they don't feel so mini, but the decisions that we all have to make all day long, right? That is like, where do you accept and where do you set a boundary? That is going to be, first of all, that is literally the whole struggle of parenting, right? I mean, from the time they're so little, I'm feeding them baby avocado and they're spitting it all over the place. Do I keep trying, right? It starts from that young, and it moves all the way up to when they're married and they have kids and I'm the grandma, which I'm not, but I'm just projecting, right? That is literally the entire parenting in a nutshell. When do I push? When do I accept? Okay. So those decisions, that is going to be always dependent on the child in front of you. And so the basic guideline that I would put is, if it's basically going to work and not ruin your relationship, I don't mean that they're not going to be like a little annoyed at you temporarily. That's totally normal. I mean that if your rules are eroding your relationship to the point that you're losing your kid, it's time to rethink. I think another factor that's important in the example that you gave is the peer group that they're in. Now, I'm not a fan of like everybody is doing it, I should do it too. And if something is objectively wrong, no, I don't care if all your friends are doing it. That's not cool. But if it's sort of like a cultural norm, like when is everybody getting a phone? Everybody's downloading Snapchat or whatever, right? Or I don't know, perhaps they're on the newest app. Sorry, TikTok. I'm like stuck in 5 years ago. Is
Yeah.
Snapchat even a thing? Did it disappear? I never
No,
heard.
they still have it, I think. They do.
Okay. Oh, fine. TikTok.
Yes.
Then I think you have to be savvy about the cultural climate of your kid. Because if you chose to live in that community, send your kid to that school, and that's their peer group, unless something is objectively immoral, right, or illegal, if your kid is the only one in their peer group who's not allowed to do X, that's not fair to your kid.
Yeah.
It's not.
Right.
So I think that's an important thing to consider. I also find it interesting, by the way. One of my kids was very into downloading Snapchat, blah, blah, blah. And I really didn't want her to. So I sort of made this like funny joke because she was in this like verbal tick where she would say basically before every sentence. So basically, blah, 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 basically, blah, blah. So I made a joke. I said, if you can go a whole day without saying basically, I'll let you download Snapchat.
Ooh.
So it was like,
Ooh.
it was like kind of a joke, you know, and it was sort of like just to cure her of this verbal tick, which it did. But I said, listen, I said, I'll tell you why I don't love Snapchat. You know, it's kind of addictive. And by the way, we have to look at ourselves. Am I addicted to Instagram? Because if so, I can't very well tell my child not to get addicted to whatever.
Right.
But anyway, so I said, listen, you know, I just find that sometimes, you know, kids are on it. Kids can post things because they disappear. It's whatever. There are reasons, you know. I said, but listen, I used a similar approach to my 10-year-old. I said, listen, try it. See if you like it. See if it makes you more happy than sad. Let's talk in a month. A couple months later, she decided to deactivate Snapchat. She was like, what's the point?
Right.
Whereas if I would have been pushing no Snapchat, no Snapchat, no Snapchat, then they have to save face.
Right.
They can't say Snapchat is a waste of time because then
Right.
you win and they lose. So you got to be
It's a power
careful.
struggle. You have
That's
the power
exactly
struggle.
right.
Yeah. So, Ruchi, I want to, there have been questions that have been submitted specifically to you this evening, and I want to get to them before our time is up.
Okay.
And also, I think as we ask these questions, I think more your approach will become more to life. It will bring your approach to life as you talk about the specifics.
Okay.
So, are you okay if we start addressing some of the questions this evening?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I also, to our audience that's listening tonight, I'd love to hear, I know somebody just submitted a question. If you have any questions that come up spontaneously for you, which is happening to me as I'm speaking to Ruchi, so I'm sure it's happening to you too, please feel free to put it in the chat and I will definitely get to it before the end of the session, God willing, if we have enough time. Okay, so I guess the first question we can ask is, what do we do? So you're talking about the parenting approach of radical acceptance. So I think this question would answer if both mom and dad are sitting here tonight listening to this talk. But if that's not the case, or if mom and dad have a different approach to dealing with a specific kid or situation, how do we navigate that with our child? How would you?
That's a great question. I find in general, and there are definitely exceptions, that mothers are more open to this approach and fathers less so. I find that fathers are often more authoritarian because I'm the parent, that's why, you know, that sort of thing. And it can easily, especially if you have a particularly difficult child, it can easily destabilize and even sometimes, God forbid, ruin the marriage. So I think it's really important that the parents, whatever they each feel about the parenting style, that they make a decision that their marriage comes first. Because nothing will hurt your child, you know, more if they're already having issues and then you're going to throw a divorce into the mix. Their issues will probably intensify, especially if the parents are fighting about them. That can be, you know, very difficult for a
Source of
child.
guilt for that child also.
Right. So the parents have to make a commitment to put their marriage first. That means if you have a particularly difficult child, don't spend all your time as a couple talking about that child. Make sure to, again, focus on the positive, focus on the other kids, focus on you as a couple. Who were you before you had kids? Did you have any ideas, any ambitions? Are you reading anything interesting? You know, talk about ideas, talk about who you are as a human being. Don't get obsessed with your difficult child. I don't think, and some may disagree, I don't think it's so terrible if parents have a slightly different parenting approach. Being on the same page means respecting each other. It doesn't mean always saying the same thing. My kids know good and well who they should come to for money, who they should come to for permission, they should come to for technology, who they should come to help them, homework for them. They know exactly, right? What is mom willing to do? What is dad willing to do? And they know how to play it. I don't think that's such a terrible thing. Okay. Actually, I think it's healthy for a child. I think it gives them a bit of balance. However, I do think that in general, parents have to be on the same page. Can you hear me okay? You look frozen to me.
I hear you perfectly. Your face has frozen for me. Has my face frozen for you? Ruchi? Now I don't hear you. Sorry about that, everybody. Hopefully we'll get Ruchi back really soon. I'm hoping. Okay, so we've lost Ruchi, but hopefully she'll be back. Yay! Hi, Ruchi. You're on mute.
Thank you. I don't know what
Okay.
happened. I just kind of got cut off. So
Okay.
where did I cut out? What was I saying?
Okay. No, so you were saying how it's not so terrible if parents have a different parenting approach.
Yeah. Now,
Necessarily.
obviously, they can't be dramatically different, right? Otherwise, that's very confusing for the kids. But if in general, most of the time they're on the same page, I think that's okay. I think it is important for parents to have a mentor in their parenting, somebody that is mutually chosen, so that when there is a difference of opinion about what to do, they can call that person, and that person could be a therapist, it could be a parenting expert, it could be a pediatrician, it could be a rabbi, or some other spiritual mentor. There's lots of types of people that person could be. But so that when they have a difference of opinion, no, I really think we should get her a phone. No, I really don't think so. Okay, well, let's agree to ask this third party person, and have a conversation with them. Again, it doesn't have to be this unilateral handing down of a ruling. It could be and should be the beginning of a conversation, but that at the end of the conversation, there's an agreement that they will follow what that person says. I think that's very important and very critical. One thing I do see happening a lot, and this happened to me, is that
Ruchi, I
especially if a
think we're
parent is trying
losing
out a new
you.
technique, is that
Ruch, do you hear me? Ruchi? Oh boy. I'm so sorry about this, everybody. Hopefully Ruchi will join us shortly in a minute. And I'd love to get to some more questions as well, because there's been really wonderful questions here. All right, everybody, as we wait for Ruchi to join us, I feel so badly because this is such a perfect topic that we really need to delve into. Okay, we have her back. Let's hope third time's a charm. Let's hope she stays with us.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi tonight. I apologize.
No worries. Let's hope you stay with us this time.
Okay. Yes, I mean.
Okay,
So,
let's,
um,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Do you want
No,
to finish
so
the thought?
so what I was gonna say is that what I see happening a lot is that the mom tries to control the dad and tries to get him to say the things she wants him to say. I think it's important, if you're a woman listening to this who has a husband, it is very important to let your husband develop his own relationship with the kids. And that doesn't have to be your relationship with the kids. He doesn't have to say everything you want him to say. You got to get out of the middle. A very wise therapist told that to me once. Get out of the middle. And if the kids come to you and they say, "Why is dad this and why is dad that?" You should say, I don't know, sweetheart. You got to talk to dad about that. Don't play peacemaker. Don't play
Right,
mediator. You're not the UN. You're not the Secretary of State. Get
right,
out of the middle.
right. And it's okay for them to have their specific special relationship with daddy where you're not involved.
Yeah.
It's just fine.
Yes.
Yes. All right, let's move on. We've got a lot of great questions here. Okay, so someone
Okay.
actually asked about the homework. So this is the question. So back to the homework question. If homework is not done for math class, clearly taking away video games or TV just doesn't work as a punishment. What would you suggest the punishment be? This was the question
Yeah.
in the chat.
So I don't believe in punishments. I
I
believe in
thought you were
natural
going to say that.
consequences. I
Yeah.
believe in natural consequences. Um, if that were my child, well, let's just say it depends on the age of the child. If that's an elementary school child, I would call up the teacher and I would say, hey, listen, the kid is not doing their homework. What's your general protocol for homework? And if they say, well, if they don't, do their homework, then they have to do it at school, blah, blah, blah. I would say, okay, here's the thing. I'm having a really hard time motivating my child. Now, if your child has some sort of special need or reason, they have ADHD or whatever, then that's different. Homework should definitely be modified. But if it's a mainstream child, then I think you should tell the teacher, great, I am not going to be dealing with this at home. I want you to impose any consequence that you would normally impose. Again, unless it's draconian or punitive or horrible. But if it's normal, then you tell the teacher. So teachers are shocked, by the way, because they think you're calling to tell them, leave my kid alone. And instead you're telling them, I want my child to experience a natural consequence for not doing their homework. So whatever that natural consequence is. But I don't want to ruin my relationship with my kid over homework. Now, if it's a teenager, I wouldn't get involved with their teacher. I would just let the natural consequences fall where they may. Now, a
Well,
kid may tell you that they don't care if they get an F, but that's not true. Kids care about getting an F, but your nudging is not going to solve that problem.
yeah, I love it. Okay, thank you, Ruchi. All right, what if our child's behavior is influencing their siblings in a negative way? How can we fully accept that?
That is not only an amazing question, but it is one of the toughest issues that come up. Because it's not just about meeting each child where they are. There has to be an understanding that every decision of every child affects every other child because it's a family system, right? Each child does not live in a vacuum, in a silo, and the actions that you take are going to affect everyone in the family. In a sense, this is a line I always use with my kids. Fair does not mean same. I don't when you let one kid not do their math homework, right? So to speak. Another kid says, that's not fair. How come I have to do my math homework?
Right.
Right? Or my child is cursing and I'm choosing to ignore it and my other kids are scared, right? Then what happens? So it is my job to give each child what they need. Even that's not going to be the same thing for every child, right? And I believe that, God created all of us different. God did not make us all the same. So is that fair? Yes, it's fair because I believe that God makes each of us with what we need.
Right.
Is it fair that somebody else had an easier parenting journey and I had a really hard one? Yeah, it's fair because I believe that God gave me what I need. So my kids, no, I'm not going to treat them all the same. And so I would say to that kid, if they say that's not fair, how come they don't have to do their math homework? I would say, you know what? That child, I'm working with that child on the things that are easy and hard for them. Would you like to talk about some things that are easy and hard for you? And then we could figure out how to make things fair for you. Now, the harder thing is the example I used. A child is cursing, right? Or bringing home friends that are unpleasant, scary, smell bad, smoking weed, whatever, right? How do I protect the other children in the home? I will be honest with you and tell you that I do not have a good answer for this. What I sometimes do is just give empathy to everyone. I know it's so annoying that your sister always complains about your friends. I know it's so annoying that your brother brings home such annoying friends. I just try to dole out empathy for everyone. Eventually, my kids are going to have to learn that I can't solve every problem. And eventually, I'm going to have to learn that too. And living with difficult siblings is part of the laboratory of life. So if somebody's being bullied or victimized, it is my job as a parent to protect them. But otherwise, I can't. I can't always solve every problem. I try my best. I can try my best to create the boundaries, to make each child feel safe, to empathize, but I can't always clean up every mess.
And it's teaching your children this valuable lesson that I wish I would have learned when many years ago, is that parents cannot control everything. They're not in control of it all. And it gives them that, like, if I guess as parents, we're role modeling that acceptance, that will help them in their process of learning to accept life situations.
Yeah, so true. I will add something that sometimes if you have a difficult child, especially if that child does have a special need, whether it's again like a learning disability or a neurological difference, sometimes the more typical functioning children can feel left out because the difficult child can get so much attention, whether negative or positive, and gets these, incentive systems and therapists and all these things. And the typically functioning child very often ends up getting ignored. And it's very important to pay extra attention to those kids. At some point over the years, I developed something called special time. So my typical child and I would go out every single week. We would go out for pizza, go out for ice cream, go to the mall, watch some cooking show on Netflix just to spend special time together apropos of nothing. It wasn't a reward, it wasn't an incentive system. It was just because. And I think that that's really critical. So that also, like, building that relationship with the child who's not struggling is really important in helping them feel seen and noticed and valued.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ruchi. Okay, next question. Is there a line that needs to be drawn at some point, a behavior or action that we should not accept?
Okay. So we
And
sort of touched on, sorry, was there
yes,
more?
no, so the just to fully ask the question, if yes, where is that line and how do we know when we've reached it?
Okay.
So I think what you had said before about safety, right? If they're a danger to themselves,
Or
that
others.
would be the one line. And what was the other?
A danger to themselves or others. Um, I think if they're behaving in a way that's frightening to themselves or others, then that's where I think parents have to draw the line. And I think that how will you know? I just think that you have to have your eyes open. And because sometimes what happens in a difficult situation is that you start to get used to crazy behavior and you don't really notice when you're crossing that line.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always important to ask yourself, like, does this house feel safe? And if it doesn't feel safe, then you need to do something about it.
So,
Or if your child is a threat to themselves, you got to jump in. You can't sit on your hands.
so when you say you accept it until that point where you have to do something, what does doing something look like? Because your punishments are not going to work, consequences are not going to work, right? We've talked about that in this approach. So if we're going to
Yeah.
put our foot down, how
So
does that, what does that look like?
it's not gonna be a punishment, but it's gonna be sort of like let me think of an example. There was a time in which some kids were taking our car at night after we went to sleep. Now, normally we didn't make a big fuss about it. We kind of knew where our kids were. We knew who their friends were, and we didn't make a big deal about it. But there was a point at which that started to feel unsafe. So we told our kids, like, we told them clearly, like, we don't feel safe with the car being out that late, and when we go to bed, we're going to be taking the keys with us to our room at night because we need to make sure that you and others are safe. So it's not punitive. It's just trying to circumvent the situation as best as you can. You want to be careful not to say, like, I'm going to take away your phone. I don't think that's ever a good, punishment. I'm going to deactivate the Wi-Fi. Yeah, good luck punishing yourself. Um, so again, like, still coming from an attitude of acceptance, right? But drawing a strong boundary to maintain safety.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just putting out an example here. Example, what if a child decides that they want to leave the house from another friend's car after you're sleeping?
Yeah, I can't control that.
But it's dangerous.
Right. It is dangerous. So here's the thing. There is a limit to the line that you can draw. That's part of the whole concept of radical acceptance, is that we think that what we can control is limitless, but we're accepting that there are limits to our control. So I can set the boundary where I can set the boundary. I can decide who's going to drive my car, understanding full well that I cannot control whose car my child gets into a car with. I cannot lock my child in his room at night. I can't lock him in the house, right? If he's 16, 17, I can't.
So, but is there a reaction to that act that the child did? Or
So
you just ignore it, you accept it? What's your response when that happens repeatedly? What do you then, as a parent, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. So if there's a relationship of trust, right, then I could sit down with my kid and say, listen, I'm concerned about this. I worry about you. It's my job to keep you safe. At the same time, there's an acceptance on my part that if my kid really wants to do that, they're going to do that. And there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. No punishment is going to help. No speech is going to save it. No disappointment is going to solve it. And that's part of the acceptance. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. I will do whatever I can to keep my child safe. But guess what? If my child wants to put himself or herself into a dangerous situation, he or she will. And then I can only hope to maintain this relationship so that if God forbid, and I tell this to my kids overtly, If you are ever in trouble, you know you can call me, no questions asked. I will not freak out. I will not give you a lecture. I will help you. Something terrible happened to you. You did something terrible to somebody else. You were involved in something illegal. I promise you that you can tell me and I will help you. And that is literally that is literally the goal of parenting with these kids, because you know that they're going to get in trouble. The only question is, are they going to fess up to you, and then you can help guide them to like positive reactions and constructive, behaviors to fix the problem or make it better, or are they going to lie to you and just make the problem worse and give themselves more trauma by being unable to talk about what happened.
So what I think I'm hearing you saying is that even if in the short run, so to speak, I can give a consequence, like I'm taking away your phone, whatever it is, or we're not going to let certain friends in the house anymore after they do certain things. That may work for a time. You may get the message across, but then when they need you, they're not going to come to you, and you would have sacrificed your relationship with them.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And what I'm also saying is that if I tell you I'm going to take away your phone, they're going to go and buy some burner phone at Target.
Right.
If I say that you can't have those friends over anymore, fine, then I'll get together with them in the parking lot of Target at midnight.
Right.
So we're actually it's backfiring.
Yeah.
Because the kid will then be motivated to prove to you, you can't control me.
Right. So also I just want to address this to our audience. What Ruchi said before, if our children are not doing these things and they're not acting out and they're wonderful, amazing, like poster board teens, then we're not going to have these issues, right? If it's not broken, we don't have to fix it. What I think Ruchi's saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ruchi, is that this is when the situations are already occurring, the behavior is already happening. This would be the proper way to deal with it. This is not necessarily normal behavior of all teenagers.
Well, yes. So there's the macro part of with radical acceptance, which is really seeing and accepting the child who's in front of you. That applies to everyone. That applies to all kids. Difficult, easy, challenging, all kids need to be really seen for who they are. I'm an extrovert, my kid's an introvert, accept that, right? I'm a math whiz, I'm not. I'm a math whiz, my kid couldn't care less. I accept that. I had 100 friends, my kid has one. I accept that. That's not, and with other things as well. In terms of the micro, right? I am talking about in general, this applies to all kids. Stop trying to control them with threats and punishments. That generally backfires. With kids that are generally compliant, like you said, even if they're in a bad mood for a little while, but they come around, definitely lovingly set boundaries, right? With trust. But if you have a kid who's breaking every one of those boundaries, that's when parenting with radical acceptance takes on a little bit of a different twist.
Got it. Okay, so moving on, it is about 9:00. So for those of you that need to go, completely understand, this is going to be recorded, so you'll have the recording. But I do want to, Ruchi, you're okay if we go on for another few minutes, just finishing up the questions that we had?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Okay. So here's a good one, which you really, a lot of the questions are, what do you do if social media plays a huge influence on your teen's life? What do you do when your teens become friends with people who are a bad influence? So those are questions I think you've already addressed. But one question I think here that I think we all can relate to. I'm embarrassed. Someone wrote, I'm embarrassed to even write this, but sometimes I don't really like my teen. How do I deal with these feelings of guilt? The fact that we don't really, at times want to spend time or want to sit with them and play with their board games or their computer games or whatever it is. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, that's very real. I think we've all been there. I heard something really interesting. I heard that the reason God makes babies so cute is because they need so much care. And if they wouldn't be cute, we would have a really hard time. The reason God makes teenagers so difficult is because eventually they have to leave. And if they would stay that cute, we would never let them leave.
We wouldn't want them to go. Got
But
it.
since they're not that cute, we're like, fine, leave.
Get out.
So I think those feelings are so normal and they're so human. But I also think it's really important, and this is such a big part of acceptance, is to reclaim what you love about your kid. We spend so much time focusing on the problems because we're fixers and we're controllers, and we want to be good parents, and good parents intervene in the friends and the homework and the social media and how the kid dresses and speak nicely to your elders, and that we forget what's lovable about our kids.
Yeah.
And it is our job as parents, totally, accept the fact that sometimes you don't like your kid. That is so normal. That is so human. That is so valid and legitimate. Also, work on that. There are so many things about your child that are so beautiful that you forgot. Um, you know, when my daughter turned 26, she wasn't so excited that she was turning 26. And she said to me, I don't want any presents. I don't want a party. I don't want anything. So instead, for her present, I wrote to her 26 things that I love about her.
Aw.
It was not hard to come up with 26 things that I love about her. And this has not been an easy child to parent. Challenge yourself to keep a journal and to write those things and to remind yourself what you love about your kid and to spend time with your kid doing those things that may remind you about why you love them.
Ruchi, can I tell you something? One of the, like, what I heard something, what you wrote about one of your children on a social media platform. And that was when like that feeling of, wow, I really like this woman. You shared such a beautiful story. I think it was your son maybe had always wanted to go skydiving, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And you shared how you wanted to be there for that child and do what that child wanted to do. There is no way in any place that I would ever, I don't care how much I love my kid, I'm not jumping out of a plane. No, that's a really high level of love.
Well,
right there.
let me just qualify that, okay? I happen to think it was kind of cool. I would never have done it on my own. But I don't think that if that scares you, that's something that you have to do. Okay.
I was thinking, like, oh my God, I hope my kid never asked me to go skydiving with them.
But I do have to tell you that my next son, who was like 16 at the time, he's like, Mom, when I turn 18, because you have to be 18, we are totally doing that for my 18th birthday. And I'm like, yes, of course. And thank God he turned 18 and he never asked me. And now he's 20 and he still hasn't asked me. And I'm relieved. But
Okay.
so I don't think the takeaway from that, as flattered as I am, is that you have to go skydiving with your kid.
It's just the level you would take to show that you're there with your child.
Yeah,
That is
yeah.
just so
That's
beautiful.
important. And I think every parent has to try, again, to the limits of your ability, is to try to really meet your kid where they are.
Yeah.
And that's really like, I think sometimes the reason we don't like our kids is because we're not meeting them where they are. They're fighting them on where they are.
Yeah. And we have
So,
to, I think a lot of it is also just taking our own ego out of it.
oh,
Like
totally.
we just have all these dreams for these kids because
You.
they're little us and they're representations of us. And
Mm.
oh no, what are people going to say when my child's prancing around all over and oh, this is so and so's kid? That's a really,
There's a lot of shame.
there's a lot of shame. And I think if that component gets taken out, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And we're able to
Especially
really,
especially if your kid is active on social media and they don't write things that, you're proud of, and it can be really, really embarrassing. That's public.
yeah.
Um, so I think it's so normal to not like our kids sometimes, but we really have to bring down the catastrophizing. This is terrible. This is a disaster. This is horrible. This is so embarrassing. When you hear yourself telling yourself those things, you really have to reroute, because that is not going to be helpful in your relationship with your child. I'll throw out an example. I have one kid who has terrible time management skills. This child probably goes to bed at like 3 and like a.m. and wakes up at like noon, right? Now, that's not normal, right? But after a long time of trying to fix it, I realized I'm not going to change this. I'm not going to fix it. I'm going to accept it. So I told my kid, you know what? I realized you're on Honolulu time. I just realized that. You are on Honolulu. Imagine this child is like living in Honolulu and is on a different time zone than me. Could that be okay? That could be okay. Are there some people who work the night shift and sleep during the day? Yeah, there are some people who work the night shift and sleep during the day. What if I could come at it from that perspective instead of from this disaster perspective? I would like my kid a lot more.
Yeah.
because every time they did that, I wouldn't be like, look at how low functioning they are, look how immature they are, look at how lazy they are. Those messages make us dislike our kid. So we got to check that tape reel in our heads and replace it with more useful language.
I love it. I've got such a wealth of nuggets here that I just want to take and start putting into practice right now. Ruchi, before we say goodnight to our audience, is there one take home of, we said, so you said so many beautiful things this evening.
As did you.
Thank you. And I just, it's sometimes hard to take all the different thoughts and, make it concrete. So if there is one thing that you would like to share with our listeners that they could take home with them, what would that be?
That's a great question. I think I would really, as a takeaway, just bring God into the picture, because a big part of acceptance for me is my faith in the wisdom that God gave me the children that I need to grow, and that God gave my kids the parents that they needed to grow. And so this isn't some kind of huge cosmic mistake or some huge global emergency or like some train going off the rails, although it certainly feels like that sometimes. If I could replace that with messages of faith, right? Everything happens for a reason. My child was meant to travel this journey. God chose me to be the parent because I am the parent that God feels that my child needs, even though I sometimes may feel ill equipped. I may feel like I can't, but I don't believe there are any mistakes in this world. And so some kids are going to, Rabbi Shimon Russell, who is a therapist who lives in Israel, who speaks about this issue a lot. He says there are some kids called APK kids. He calls those autopilot kids, right? Some kids are going to be autopilot kids. I have a couple of them, not very many. You wind them up and they just kind of go. But then
No,
there are
not
the
too much
kids,
watering.
yeah.
Not too much. Yeah.
But then there are the kids who have a harder time, or maybe even the APK kids are going to have a harder stage here and there, right? And then you got to remind yourself, this is okay. This is happening the way it was supposed to happen. This is the journey my child needs to travel to be the person they need to be. And I am the parent they need on that journey. And therefore, I am going to try my best to be the best parent that they need on that journey. And if I can be there as a calm, mature force in my child's life, I am totally upping the chances that they will emerge from these tumultuous years with their self esteem and their joy in life, and most importantly, their relationships with their loved ones intact and ready to handle what life is going to throw at them.
Oh, beautiful, Ruchi. Thank you so much. And I'm just listening to this, and I'm also thinking that God is the one that actually entrusted, out of all the millions of parents out there, He gave our kids to us because He has that faith in us that we're the right ones to parent them. So knowing that knowledge as well is a sort of an extra boost too, to be able to accept all that comes our way and have faith that God gave us this for a reason.
Yeah, and to accept ourselves as the imperfect parents who are going to make mistakes, and that's okay, right? That's part of it too.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ruchi. This was amazing.
Thank you. It was great to be here with you. I could talk to you all night.
I know. I know. Everybody, thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you
I
for
would like to
joining.
have a wonderful Shabbat, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Take care.